They told everyone I gave up. They said I was wasting time, that I was drifting, that I couldn't hold on to anything long enough to make it mean something. They whispered things behind my back that echoed louder in my own mind than their mouths could ever carry. She's just going through a phase. Maybe she'll marry someone successful. Such a shame. She was so smart. They didn't know that I had dreams bigger than job titles. They didn't understand that some fires don't burn on command. They smolder slowly, beneath the surface, waiting for their moment. They rewrote my story before I had a chance to live it. I wasn't lost. I was waiting. Quietly, desperately, painfully waiting for life to catch up to the version I could already see in my head. It wasn't failure. It was something bigger, just not visible yet. And when you don't look like success on the outside, they treat you like you're invisible. When I walked into rooms, they talked about LinkedIn updates and 401ks. I talked about texture, feeling, and timing, and they just smiled politely like I was a foreigner who hadn't learned the language of real life yet. But I saw something they didn't. I saw an escape route that didn't come with benefits or blueprints. One that wouldn't be safe or comfortable, but might just give me the one thing I wanted most. Freedom. My name is Alyssa James, I'm 28 years old, and I live in Portland, Oregon. And before any of this happened, before the business, before the press, before the strange moment when people started pretending they always believed in me, I was just the girl who disappointed everyone by walking away from the life they thought I should live. I remember the exact moment I knew I was on my own. It was a Wednesday morning. Gray skies, wet roads. The kind of morning that doesn't begin so much as it continues from the night before. I had just quit my job at a mid-tier marketing firm 2 days earlier. No backup plan, no savings cushion, just this aching certainty that staying would slowly kill the part of me I was still trying to protect. I sat on my mom's couch, hands wrapped around a chipped coffee mug, listening to the silence stretch between us. She didn't say anything for a while. Just watched the rain against the window like it had something more interesting to say than I did. Then she spoke. Soft. Heavy. You know, there's nothing wrong with stability, Alyssa. I nodded. You had good benefits there. And it wasn't even a bad job. I nodded again. People your age would kill for that. I finally looked up. I didn't leave because it was bad. I left because I couldn't feel anything anymore. She sighed. The kind of sigh that carried generations of practicality, immigrant hustle, sacrifice, and fear of being left behind. Then what are you going to do? I didn't have an answer. Not one I could explain in words. I just knew deep in my bones that it had to be something I built. From scratch. With my hands, my vision, my heart. Something that was mine. But try telling that to someone who worked 3 jobs so you could go to college. She patted my knee, stood up and said, just promise me you'll think about getting a real job again. That word. Real. As if everything else was pretend. As if value only existed on company letterhead. The thing about going off script is that people stop reading your story. They stop asking how you're doing, not because they don't care, but because your answers scare them. So you learn to smile and say things like, just taking time to explore. I'm figuring some stuff out. Keeping things flexible right now. It's easier that way. But inside, you start building a private world where your ideas live. Messy. Fragile. Impossible to explain. For me, that world was candles. Yes, candles. Not the scented ones with fancy French names. I mean handmade, intentional, therapeutic candles. Crafted with herbs, essential oils, affirmation rituals. Each one designed to help people feel something. Calm, clarity, release. I didn't know what I was doing at first. I was just following an instinct. I'd light candles when I felt overwhelmed, and slowly I began to wonder, what if I could make ones that actually did something? I started with $47 in my account and a notebook full of ideas. I watched YouTube tutorials. Burned dozens of batches. Gave myself headaches from testing too many essential oil blends. But I kept going, because every time I lit one, I felt connected. Like something ancient and feminine and powerful was coming through. Like I was reclaiming something I didn't even know I'd lost. Of course, I didn't tell anyone. They'd laugh. Or worse, they'd smile that oh sweetie smile. So, I worked in secret. During the day, I picked up odd jobs. At night, I melted wax and whispered intentions into glass jars. I made labels by hand. I tested scents on myself. I even burned my finger twice and cried like a child, not from pain, but from this wild sense that I was doing something real. Still, the whispers came. Is she still doing that candle thing? I thought she went to college? At this point, she should just get married. They reduced my entire being to a checklist of failures. But they didn't see the orders trickling in. The late-night DMs from strangers saying my Clarity Blend helped them through a panic attack. The email from a woman who lit my release candle while signing her divorce papers and said it gave her courage. They didn't see the hundreds of candles on my bedroom shelf, each one labeled with care and love and energy. They didn't know that those candles were keeping me alive. Because when the world calls your dreams silly, you have to fight to keep them sacred. And then something strange started happening. Not loud, not overnight, but steady. Sales went from 3 a week to 12, then 30, then 50. Then I had to stop taking orders just to catch up. People started tagging me, writing reviews, sharing my website, recommending me to therapists, yoga studios, grief counselors. The world I built in private started leaking into the public. And it terrified me, because once people know, they can hurt it. But also, once they know, they can't unsee you anymore. Still, I kept quiet around my family. At Thanksgiving, my uncle asked what I was up to these days. Before I could speak, my cousin jumped in. She's still doing her little candle thing. Everyone chuckled. Not cruelly, just dismissively. And I smiled. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I knew something they didn't. They thought I was playing house. But I was building an empire. I was supposed to be the one who made it. The straight-A student. The debate team captain. The girl who always turned her assignments in early, color-coded her planner, and interned for a congresswoman the summer before college. Everyone had me figured out. She's going places, they said. She's got a good head on her shoulders. My daughter could learn a thing or two from her. I didn't mind the pressure, at least not at first. It felt like affirmation. Like I mattered. Like I was being seen. I majored in political science and communication at UCLA, and everyone assumed law school was next. Even I did. I had the apps ready, the scores, the rec letters. But something inside me stalled. It didn't feel like fear. It felt like numbness. I kept pushing forward anyway, because people like me don't quit. Until I did. It started small. I'd stare at the blinking cursor on my law school essay, and my hands wouldn't move. I'd get invited to events and find myself making excuses. Midterms, I'd say. Or, I've got an early morning. I was tired all the time. Not the kind of tired sleep could fix, but the kind that settles behind your eyes and turns even joy into noise. Then came the panic attacks. Quiet ones. Internal. I'd sit in lectures and feel my throat tighten. I'd open case studies and feel like I was disappearing. There were days when even brushing my teeth felt monumental. I didn't tell anyone. Because how do you explain that everything you worked for suddenly feels like a prison? The breaking point came at a dinner with extended family. It was my mom's birthday. We were all seated around a long table at an Italian restaurant in downtown Portland. White tablecloths. Clinking glasses.
Candlelight.
Safe, warm, familiar. And then someone said it. So, Alyssa, when are you starting law school? I smiled. Took a sip of water. Bought myself a second. Actually, I decided not to apply. Silence. Thicker than the marinara sauce on my untouched plate. My aunt blinked.
Oh.
My uncle frowned.
Why?
My mother smiled too quickly and said, she's just taking a break. Figuring things out. I opened my mouth, but nothing felt right. What could I say? That I felt dead inside? That the future they wanted for me felt like a life sentence in disguise? I just nodded.
Yeah.
Just a little break. And just like that, the room moved on. But I didn't. That moment shifted everything. It was like watching a house crumble in slow motion. The house you built with perfect bricks.
good grades,
internships, a framed degree, all falling into dust. I moved back in with my mom for a few months, which became a year. At first, people pretended to understand. It's okay. A lot of people feel lost after college. The job market's tough right now. You'll bounce back. But the sympathy had a timer. And when it expired, it was replaced with something colder, disappointment disguised as concern. My phone stopped ringing. Friends from school moved on, posting photos from new jobs, sleek apartments, whiteboards full of business goals. I stopped posting altogether. Because what was I supposed to share? My daily walks? My resume revisions? The fact that I cried in the shower at least twice a week? My mom tried to be supportive, in her own quiet way. But I could feel the worry in her eyes. The way she avoided introducing me to new people. The way she nodded a little too hard when someone mentioned job fairs or returning to school. One night, she knocked on my door and handed me a brochure. It was for a certificate in digital marketing. 3 months. Online. Flexible for all lifestyles. Just something to think about, she said, before walking away. I sat there, staring at it. I didn't blame her. I just felt like I was slipping through the cracks of my own life. I tried a few things. A social media internship that paid in exposure. A part-time receptionist job that made me feel like a ghost with a headset. Even tutoring high school kids in AP English until one of them said, "Wait, you went to UCLA? Why are you doing this?" That one stuck. Why was I doing this? Why wasn't I doing more? The truth was, I didn't know what more even looked like anymore. I had stripped away the version of me everyone admired. But I hadn't built anything in its place yet. I was blank. The worst part wasn't the judgment. It was the pity. People looked at me like a fallen star. Once so promising. Now just lost. My brother once said, in what I'm sure he meant as kindness, "We all have different paths, LYSS. Some of us take longer to figure things out." I nodded. But inside I wanted to scream. Because I had figured something out. I just didn't know how to say it yet. Didn't know how to explain that I didn't want to chase titles or wear suits or memorize scripts for boardroom meetings. I wanted to feel something when I worked, not just accomplish. Connect. I started spending more time alone. Long walks. Sitting in local cafes. Browsing secondhand bookstores. Lighting candles and journaling at 2 a.m. That's when I started hearing the whispers. Not from others. From inside. They weren't clear. They weren't loud. But they said things like, what if you created something instead of trying to fit in? What if your piece is not where they told you it would be? What if you stopped apologizing for being different? Those whispers weren't comforting. They were terrifying. Because they meant I had to walk away from the map everyone else followed. One afternoon, I lit a candle my friend gave me for my birthday. It was lavender and sage. Nothing fancy. But something about the flicker, the smell, the way it filled the room, it moved me. I felt still for the first time in weeks. And I had this strange, beautiful thought. What if I could create something that helped other people feel this too? It didn't feel like a business idea. It felt like a lifeline. So I followed it.
clumsily,
Quietly. One step at a time. And no one noticed. No grand plan. No investor. No mentor whispering secrets in my ear. Just an idea and a quiet kind of desperation. After that moment with a candle, I started researching. Not for a job, but for a feeling. I Googled things like, how to start a handmade candle business. Best waxes for aromatherapy. Can scent change your mood? My search history became a map of longing. A breadcrumb trail leading me back to myself. The first candle I ever made was terrible. Too much fragrance oil. The wick kept drowning in wax. I lit it, and it hissed like it was angry at me. But I didn't care. I made another. Then another. By the fifth one, I'd found a rhythm. Lavender and cedarwood. Vanilla and eucalyptus. Cinnamon with a drop of clove. I gave them names. Reset. Unspoken. Quiet flame. They smelled like the parts of me I'd forgotten. Calm, warm, a little messy. I gave one to my neighbor, Doris, who lived alone down the street. She'd recently lost her husband. She hugged it to her chest and whispered, "This smells like him." I wasn't sure what to say, but something inside me lit up. I started small. A tiny Etsy shop. Just 6 candles, each one poured in recycled glass jars I got from a thrift store. I didn't tell anyone, not even my mom, because it felt fragile. Like if someone laughed, it would shatter. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. Then a sale. The username was flowerwitch_88. I still remember it. She ordered Quiet Flame. I wrapped it with shaking hands, tucked in a handwritten thank you note, and cried as I sealed the package. Not because of the money, because someone, somewhere, wanted something I made. I began working from my mom's garage. It smelled like wax and hope. I played music on low volume, Bon Iver, Maggie Rogers, sometimes just ocean sounds. I worked late into the night, fingers sticky with fragrance oil, hoodie sleeves rolled up, hair pulled into a bun that never stayed in place. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't Instagram-worthy, but it felt true. Orders trickled in, then doubled, then tripled. I created a tiny brand called Still and Ember. I used Canva to make my logo, shot product photos with my iPhone against a white bedsheet, wrote every product description like a love letter. This candle is for the heavy-hearted, for the nights you can't sleep and the mornings you don't want to rise, for the quiet victories. People responded, not just with orders but with messages. This made me feel less alone. I light this every night before therapy. Thank you for reminding me I matter. Each message was a thread in a tapestry I didn't know I was weaving. One day, I got a message from a woman named June. She said her elderly mother was in a nursing home across the country and was struggling with dementia. She bought her the candle called Return, hoping the scent might bring back a memory. A week later, June wrote again. She smiled when she smelled it, said it reminded her of her wedding day. She hasn't spoken about that in years. I sat on the garage floor and wept, not because I thought I was a miracle worker, but because something I made helped someone remember the most sacred part of their story. That's when I knew. This wasn't just a business. It was a quiet revolution. I wasn't just selling candles. I was offering a moment of peace in a world that wouldn't slow down. And it didn't make headlines. But it mattered. My mom noticed. One evening, she walked into the garage and just stood there, watching me label jars. She picked one up and read the scent name. Held. "These are beautiful," she said. I smiled. Said nothing. She walked over, wrapped her arms around me gently, and whispered, "I see you, Alyssa." That was the first time I'd felt seen in years. Still and Ember stayed small for a while. On purpose. I wasn't trying to go viral. I wasn't chasing investors or press. I was chasing honesty. Each scent had to mean something. Each package had to feel like a gift. It was slow. Sometimes frustrating. But it was mine. My brother still didn't ask questions. My aunt still called it her little side thing. Family parties still included conversations about real jobs. Still figuring things out? When are you going back to school? Oh, you make candles? That's cute. I nodded, smiled, swallowed the comments like vitamins I didn't want to take. But I didn't stop. Because this quiet rebuilding wasn't for them. It was for me. I kept my head down and poured. Poured wax. Poured love. Poured memory into each jar. The work was repetitive. But in that repetition, I healed. Some days, I lit a candle before I began. Just one. On a shelf above my station. Its flame reminded me, you don't have to burn down to be bright. You just have to keep burning. The first milestone came quietly. 100 sales. I didn't throw a party.
Didn't post about it.
Just stared at the number on my screen, heart pounding in my chest. 3 digits. 3 digits that whispered, "You're building something." I took a screenshot. Lit a candle. Let it flicker beside me while I poured 16 more. Things started picking up after a local mental health blogger wrote a short piece about Still and Ember. She called it, "Candles that don't just smell good, they understand you." Within 2 days, I had 183 new orders. I barely slept that weekend. But I wasn't panicking. I was alive. I had something that mattered. Something people didn't just want, they felt connected to. So I leveled up. I found a small co-working studio near downtown Portland. It used to be a photography space, but the light was perfect and the rent was just low enough to stretch my savings. I moved my supplies from my mom's garage to that studio. Every step up those stairs felt like a soft rebellion against everything I was told about real success. I brought in my old friend Zara, an artist who had been out of work since the pandemic. She helped me design new labels, hand-drawn sketches, watercolor touches. Each scent had a tiny illustration now, a mountain, a wave, a closed eye. We launched a collection called Quiet Homes, for the people who make their own peace. It sold out in 4 days. That month, we hit $7,800 in revenue. I reinvested every cent, ordered better wax, recycled glass jars from a woman-owned business in Oregon, custom boxes with gentle, earthy textures, thank you notes printed on seed paper so customers could plant them after reading. We weren't chasing trends. We were planting roots. A therapist in Chicago reached out. She wanted to offer our candles in her trauma recovery clinic. Your scents help people ground themselves, she wrote. They don't feel like products. They feel like care. We designed a line together called Return to Self. 6 candles, each one named after a feeling survivors reclaim. Steady, clear,
Soft.
unshaken, kind, home. We made 500 units. They were gone in under a week. I hired 2 part-time helpers, Maya and Carla. We worked side by side in the studio, singing along to playlists, laughing over spilled wax, crying when we read customer messages. It was sacred. No suits. No conference rooms. Just 3 women rebuilding their lives through scent and story. And we were growing. Real growth. By year 2, we were onboarding 1,200 new customers a month. Our email open rate was 78%, which I later learned is higher than some Fortune 500 brands. We had over 3,000 5-star reviews, a customer return rate of 42%, and our quarterly newsletter had readers in 17 countries. Still, at family dinners, I was invisible. My brother, Jake, came back from a banking conference in Miami. He was wearing a tailored suit and Ray-Bans. Told us about corporate retreats, IPOs, stock options. When my mom nudged him and said, "Alyssa's business is doing really well," he just sipped his drink and said, "Yeah, she's always been the free spirit." I smiled, but inside it hurt, because it didn't matter that I was employing people. Didn't matter that I paid my rent, my studio lease, my health insurance, without a single loan. In their eyes, I was still trying something out. A cute hobby. A detour. A phase. Aunt Karen visited once. Walked into the studio like she was touring an art exhibit run by 3rd graders. She looked around, touched a candle called Soft Armor, and asked, "So, do people really buy these? Or is this more of a passion project?" I wanted to scream, but instead I said, "We ship to every US state, and Canada, and parts of Europe." She blinked, said, "Huh, that's surprising." I nodded, pretending it didn't sting. Their words didn't stop me, but they echoed. And some nights, when I was alone, they burrowed deep. I'd wonder, would they respect me more if I had a desk job I hated? Would I be more successful if I wore heels and carried a briefcase? It made me angry, because I wasn't just working. I was building something that healed people. Something good. Something that gave back. I hosted free candle-making workshops at the women's shelter. Donated profits to mental health nonprofits. Created scent kits for grieving families. But none of that made it to the family group chat. My mom tried. She'd say things like, "Alyssa's doing important work. She's touching lives." But even she hesitated when people asked about my career. There was always a pause. A shift in her voice. Like she still wasn't sure if this counted. If I counted. I remember once at Thanksgiving, Uncle Dave said, "Well, When she's ready for a real job, I know a guy at Deloitte. I laughed politely, pretended not to hear my ribs tighten. Then I went home and poured 3 candles straight through midnight. I called them. Enough. Name your fire. Not yours to understand. That was the thing about my growth. It wasn't loud. It wasn't viral. It didn't scream for approval. It breathed. Softly.
Slowly.
Surely. And even if they didn't clap, I did. I clapped for the mornings I woke up with purpose. For the studio shelves lined with handmade beauty. For every single note that read. I lit this when my sister passed. I gave this to my daughter before her first therapy session. You don't know me, but you've helped me heal. I printed those messages and taped them on my studio walls. My quiet trophies. My invisible applause. And when I lit my own candle each night, I didn't need anyone else to say it. I knew I was doing real work, whether they recognized it or not. It was a Thursday evening, late spring, the kind of day where the light lingers like it's trying to remember something. I stayed at the studio later than usual. There was a bulk order from a boutique hotel in Denver, and I was determined to finish it by hand. The wax was cooling. The boxes were stacked. The smell of bergamot and cedar floated in the air like a hush. And then the bell on the studio door rang. I didn't expect anyone. It was after 8. I wiped my hands on my apron and stepped out from the back. She stood near the shelf labeled release. Maybe in her mid-30s. A little tired in the eyes, but kind. Polished, but not in a try-hard way. She looked around like she knew exactly what she was searching for, but wasn't sure how to ask for it. Hi, I said softly. Feel free to take your time. She nodded, then looked at the candle in her hand.
This one, she said.
This is the one. I smiled. It's called still water. People say it calms anxiety. She nodded again, held it close like it was a memory she hadn't unpacked yet. My fiancé gave me this, she said, right after my brother died. I paused. I'm so sorry. Yeah, she whispered. He was the only one who really understood me. Losing him, it nearly broke me. But this candle, this scent, it did something. She looked up at me. Her voice started to shake. It didn't fix anything, but it let me breathe. I kept it on my nightstand. Lit it every night before bed. I think it saved me in a way. My throat tightened. I'm glad it brought you comfort, I managed to say. Then she added something I'll never forget. He found it through something called Still and Ember. That's your supplier, right?
I didn't say anything.
Not yet. Just watched her eyes, full of grief and gratitude. She continued. He said it was a small woman-owned business doing beautiful work. He told me they made candles for feelings no one had words for. And then slowly I nodded. That's me, I said. I'm Alyssa. I'm the founder. She froze. Her hand went to her mouth. Then she started to cry, right there in the middle of my tiny shop. Not loud, not messy. Just real. Like her body had been waiting to release that for months. I moved closer. May I asked. She nodded. And I hugged her. Strangers, connected by grief and wax and something deeper. Thank you, she said into my shoulder. Thank you for creating this. For thinking of people like me. After a moment, she stepped back, wiped her eyes. You don't know how much this matters, she whispered. What you do, it's not just candles. It's sacred. She bought 5 more candles that night. And before leaving, she turned to me again and said, he used to tell me, healing comes in strange shapes. Sometimes it smells like lavender. I laughed through tears. That sounds like something I'd write, I said. Maybe that's why he found you. I locked the door behind her, sat on the floor of my studio,
and cried.
Not because I was sad, not because I was proud, but because, for the first time, the truth didn't whisper. It shouted. And it came not from the people I tried so hard to impress, but from someone who didn't owe me a thing. She didn't come in because I asked her to. She didn't praise me because we shared a last name. She didn't know me, and still, she saw me. I called Zara. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I said, wiping my face. I think we're doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing. I lit one of the new candles. Recognition. I had jokingly labeled it. But now, the name meant something entirely different. This wasn't validation I chased. It found me, walked in, told the truth, refused to stay quiet. And I knew, even if my uncle still offered me jobs I didn't ask for, even if my brother rolled his eyes, even if the world kept measuring success in suits and stock prices, this moment, it was mine. Proof that the softest things can echo the loudest. I printed her message and added it to the wall, not just because it was kind, but because it was real. Proof that something born in silence can still be heard. Something shifted after that night. Not loudly, not all at once, but the silence felt different. Less like absence, more like peace. I stopped checking the family group chat for praise. Stopped trying to prove my worth through bullet points at dinner. Instead, I printed that stranger's words on a slip of cardstock, folded it gently, slid it into a drawer in my studio desk. Didn't frame it, didn't post it online. I just kept it. A few weeks later, my mom dropped by the studio unannounced. She didn't say much, just stood in the doorway and looked around, touched the edge of a display shelf, ran her fingers along a jar of soft armor. Then, almost in a whisper, she said, "It smells warm in here." I smiled. "That's the rosewood and vanilla." She nodded, looked like she wanted to say more, but didn't know how. So I handed her a candle called Motherline. She took it with both hands, held it close like a fragile memory. And before she left, she turned back and said, "I told the girls at work about you, about the business." I raised an eyebrow. She smiled, a little embarrassed. They didn't believe one person could make all this. So, I showed them your site. I didn't cry, didn't rush to hug her. I just nodded, softly, gratefully, because that small offering, her sharing me with the world, it meant something. A few days after that, my brother Jake texted me. Just a single line. "What you've built is impressive." I mean that. No emojis. No follow-up. But I stared at that text for a long time. Read it 3 times. Then put my phone down. Not because I didn't care, but because I no longer needed his permission to feel proud. I kept showing up. Kept pouring wax. Kept writing scent poems for each collection. Kept paying my employees well. Kept donating a percentage of our earnings to domestic abuse survivors. Not because it looked good, but because it felt right. Every now and then, I'd find handwritten notes tucked into return packages. One said, "This was the only thing that helped me through chemo. Thank you." Another read, "My daughter finally opened up to me. We were sitting in the kitchen, and she said, 'I feel safe when this is lit.' It was one of yours." And I'd whisper, "That's enough." I stopped waiting for the big break. Stopped fantasizing about being on magazine covers or TED Talks or morning shows. Instead, I found joy in the quiet victories. A teenage girl buying her first candle with pocket money. A handwritten order from a retirement home in Ohio. A bakery in Vermont requesting a warm bread scent. No applause. Just moments. Real, human moments. I was no longer building to be seen. I was building to be of service. Sometimes I'd walk through the studio late at night, barefoot, the shelves lined with hundreds of candles. Each one waiting for a home. Each one filled with care. Each one carrying a piece of me, but expecting nothing in return. That's what healed me. Not success. Not numbers. Not even validation. But the quiet knowing that I was enough. Exactly as I was. No suit. No office. No title. Just me. A small flame in a big world. And I finally understood. It wasn't pride. It was peace. If you've ever been told to get a real job, if your path didn't make sense to the people who claimed to love you most, if you've ever felt invisible in rooms you built with your bare hands, this story, it was always meant for you. Not everyone will understand the way your soul works, They won't see the fire in your quiet. They won't hear the music in your late-night ideas. They'll only notice when the results make noise. And even then, some will squint as if to say, "But where's the suit? The title? The office tower?" And that's okay, because you were never the problem. Their definition of success was just too small to hold your truth. Maybe you're like me. Maybe your gift didn't come in a diploma or a LinkedIn headline. Maybe it came in your hands, your softness, your ability to make something out of nothing. And maybe, like me, you were told that wasn't enough. But hear me now.
It was. It is.
And it always will be. You don't need a room full of claps to confirm your worth. You don't need a fancy business card to validate your voice. If your work heals even one person, if it helps a stranger breathe a little easier, if it lights even the smallest corner of someone's darkness, that is holy. That is real. That is enough. Sometimes the best success is quiet. Sometimes the biggest win is peace. And sometimes the loudest applause is a handwritten note from someone who says, "I didn't think anyone understood, but this made me feel seen." So if you're sitting in your tiny apartment, doubting the thing you love, if your family still looks at you like you're playing dress-up in adulthood, if you've ever wanted to give up because the world didn't clap,
Don't.
please don't. Because somewhere out there, someone is waiting for exactly what you create. They don't know your name yet, but one day they will. And when they do, they'll tell you something you'll never forget. Something like, "This saved me."
So keep building. Keep loving.
Keep creating in the quiet, even if no one claps, even if they mock you, even if they say you're wasting time. Because your story, it's not theirs to write. And your gift, it doesn't need permission. This is for the unseen builders, the soft-hearted warriors, the makers of meaning in a noisy world. I see you. I honor you. And I promise you are not alone. If you're still here, thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for feeling with me. Now, I want to hear your story. Tell me where you're watching from.
Tell me what they said you'd never be. Tell me what you're building anyway.
Because someone else needs to hear you. And maybe, just maybe, your story is the one that will keep them going.
More stories are coming.
Stories of second chances, of quiet revolutions, of healing in the shadows. So stay close. Light a candle. And remember, you don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to speak your truth. Softly, bravely, honestly. Thank you for being here. And until next time, keep the fire lit. Let me know if you want a title card, thumbnail text, voiceover formatting, or repurpose this into a short-form reel/YouTube description. If you now want any of the following, I can generate it for you immediately.